Scary EIRE. EIRE is the Irish or Gaelic word for Ireland. Paranormal means all the things that are impossible to explain by known natural forces or by science. And Ireland is steeped in lore, ghosts, blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice, hunger, desperation, and charm. Oh, and the paranormal. Welcome to Scary EIRE.
Mark Manning.
Now, if it's offbeat, odd or unusual, and most importantly, Irish-centric, you need to talk to this guy. He is the creator behind the Weird Ireland podcast, and as well as that, he's even published a book called the same name, Weird Ireland. Hello, Brinsley McNamara.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
We shall proceed because you are one dynamic content creator. Tell people about your stats you've grown in a short while on the likes of Instagram and TikTok.
Oh, well, let's see. So on Instagram at the minute it stands at 318,000 followers. On TikTok, 81,000. There's YouTube as well. I upload YouTube shorts, so that's over. That's about nearly 14,000 at the moment. And yeah, those would be the main ones there. And that's since January of 2024, so 13 months. And, you know, we've got the book out, Weird Ireland, an unofficial guide to the island, and the podcast, Weird Ireland, that you can get on Spotify, Apple Music. There is lots of other places to get podcasts, but I get everything on Spotify, so I can never remember the names of the other ones. So, yeah, that's where we're sitting at the minute with all the Weird Ireland stuff.
So you got big, fast. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. You just created, you threw it out there, and it took off. Would that be a correct summarization?
That's a good way of putting it. I mean, it is in a way, you know, the expression in overnight success is years in the making.
It's very true for you.
Well, I suppose, yeah, because, I mean, if you were to look at just from the Weird Ireland side of it, because that started in January 2024, but by March 2024, there was over 200,000 followers. Like, that would seem like an overnight success in that regard, only taking 7 weeks to get that far. But really, I'd started years before that an Instagram page called Weird Westmeath, and that started in 2020. That never got as big, but because I did it for so long, and it was a pretty similar thing, and I did, after a couple of years, I did TikToks for that as well. But because I did that for years, it meant that I got a lot better at making videos. I got a lot better at making content. I got a lot better at making it catchier and snappier. So when Weird Ireland started, I already had a very well worked out idea of what makes good videos, what catches attention, what's good branding. If I hadn't done all that, it wouldn't have become as successful as quickly as it did, basically.
Can I ask you a question about Weird Westmeath?
Go ahead.
Well, I found this weird. You have up there a coat of arms. Now, in coat of arms, often you see crossed swords and shields and knights, suits of armour and stuff, but you had crossed crutches.
Oh, right. Yeah.
What is that about?
That's from a few years ago. I was making a new logo for Weird Westmeath because honestly, the very original logo was a glitch photograph from my phone because I used to have an old Huawei phone that would glitch. Yeah. But I made some pretty cool glitch pictures. I was just trying to come up with a new one. And do you ever watch the TV show Jackass or see the movies?
Yeah, it wasn't for me, but I remember the kind of studenty humour, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, childish even, I would say, yeah. Although not a kid show whatsoever. I used to watch when I was very, very little. But the logo of that TV show is a skull and crossbones, but instead of crossbones, it's two cross, like, what do you call them, walking sticks? Or what do you call them?
Crutches.
Crutches, yeah, because they injure themselves so much in the show. So I just fired up, and then I put a swan instead of a skull, because a swan is like the animal of Westmeath. I was just throwing something out there for the crack, basically. Although I will say that picture that you mentioned on Weird Westmeath, that's the very first time I used the expression, well, my name is Brinsley McNamara, and welcome to Weird, in that case, Westmeath, which is how I open all the videos now these days in Weird Ireland.
Hang on. Yeah, no, you're famous for that intro. Say it again. Here's your moment.
Well, my name is Brinsley McNamara, and welcome to Weird Ireland.
I love it.
That comes from Jackass. That comes from Johnny Knoxville, the host. He would open every episode and open pretty much all of his skits by saying, "Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass." So it's just my own interpolation of that. I don't know. I like the show and it kind of inspired me a lot. However, that coat of arms thing that you mentioned is pretty much the first usage of that, but it's back in Weird Westmeath.
Now, what's in a name? So it's not your real name; it's a pseudonym, isn't it? Brinsley McNamara. What's the story behind that, or why?
Well, the longer story behind that is the name comes from do you know the author Brinsley McNamara? I guess you've come upon him, have you? Or
The Valley of the Squinting Windows.
Yeah, exactly. So Brinsley McNamara was a Westmeath author. He died in 1963. And his biggest book is the one you named there, about Squinting Windows. It's his first book. It actually came out in like 1919 or 1918. It's a very old book.
It was controversial at the time, wasn't it?
It was controversial specifically in Delvin, where he was from. It wasn't really controversial outside of that. He's from a village called Delvin. It's still not a big place to this day. The controversy surrounding it was that, so in the book Valley of the Squinting Windows, it's based in an Irish village. The Irish village is not called Delvin, it's called Garradrimna, which is not a real place.
And what county is it in, Brinsley?
You know what? Delvin in real life is in Westmeath.
Okay.
I can't think if in Valley of Squinting Windows, the village is Garradrimna. I'm not sure if he ever distinctly says what county it's in. I'm not 100% sure on that. That's a really good question.
Okay.
But if anyone that was reading the book, especially if you're from there, it's pretty clear that he's writing about where he's from. He even makes reference to a Norman castle in the middle of the village built by Hugh de Lacy, I think, who was a real person. And is a Norman castle in Delvin built by Hugh de Lacy. But outside of that, the controversy was, for example, he talks about the woman who the postmistress in Delvin at the time, and if she saw a letter coming into the post office that had handwriting on it that she was unfamiliar with, she'd get nosy. She'd go to her kitchen, which is just next door. She'd turn on the kettle, use the steam to open the letter, open it, read it, put it back in, and then post it off. And there's lots of stories like that are unkind to the people at the time. So they made a bonfire and burnt all the books on it. There was a lead that the author's dad was a teacher at the time in Delvin, and all the parents stopped letting the schools go in there. All the kids go into his class. So I think he couldn't get paid. There was a lawsuit from it. There's in Delvin, it's controversial for decades. Apparently, for decades after the book came out,
they've a long memory. Those people, yeah.
But people would go visiting there at the weekend just to see if they can spot the characters in the book. They wouldn't have the same.
It's
name.
very Father Ted, isn't it?
The same people.
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah. I just wanted to say that's not his real name. The original Brinsley McNamara's name is John Weldon. It's just his pen name. And I got it just because back in 2021 for Weird Westmeath, I was applying to do a heritage project for National Heritage Week. Mm-hmm. And instead of putting my real name at the time, I just used Brinsley McNamara just because I happened to be reading Valley of the Squinting Windows at the time. It's just one that it's just stuck, to be honest, ever since years later.
Well, there's a story behind everything. Let's refocus here on the real business to hand.
Mm-hmm.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being really far out there weird, how weird is Ireland?
Okay, that's a good question. Geez, I'm going to give you maybe a slightly disappointing answer, but I'm going to give it about a 5. Then if you say Turkmenistan, I'll give it a 5. If you say Bhutan, I'll give it a 5. If you say the UK, I'll give it a 5. The only reason being that I think everywhere's got a base level amount of weirdness, and I think weirdness is just on a scale. On one end of the scale, you've got weirdness, and then on the other end, you've got familiarity. If you're very, very familiar with a place, then nothing really about it's going to seem all that weird. Like, I don't know, the way we have the Angelus on the national broadcaster or the TV, like every day of the week every day of the year at 6 o'clock.
I do, and there's a part of me, that still stops in my tracks and finds myself in my shivering shorts in the 1960s and 70s, where everything stopped for the Angelus. And these days they'll go, these days you hear a lot of, we're very multicultural now, and it's almost like, well, hang on a second, you know what it was? It was just a moment of contemplation and revelation and your place in the world. And I think the day they knock it out of the court because it's not popular anymore, it will be a very, very sad day. The Angelus.
Maybe they've been doing it since the 60s, I guess. But, I mean, the thing is, the other way we've just seen our whole life, so we don't think it's strange whatsoever. If someone was to come to I just don't. You don't even realize it's just on the background now. But if you can take a step back from that, you realize, hang on, it's not a little bit odd. Or if you can be someone who's not familiar with Ireland and see on TV. And, there's no explanation. If you've never seen it before and it just comes on TV in between an ad break and a TV show, you're like, it's just going to be this load of silence, loads of gongs of a bell and people looking at things. And then it'll move on to the TV show or the news. And you'd probably just turn to somebody and say, what was that? Like, what was just that load of quietness with bells gonging for a minute? So someone who's familiar with it, it's not going to seem weird at all. Someone who's not familiar with it, it's going to seem very, very odd. And that's the world over.
Well, and you said a very true thing there. I mean, when I was a child, I was over all around the Middle East. My father was an Irish Army officer. with the United Nations. So I was actually there for the build-up to the Six-Day War. But, I mean, I remember things like mosques going and a calling to prayer. And as you say, it's the same everywhere around the world. It's just, I suppose in our case, it was very electronic, ahead of its time. So basically, if you're listening from outside of Ireland, there's a tradition with our national broadcaster that twice a day, I think it might be still at midday and 6 o'clock in the evening, you hear the bells. These are bells in reverence of the Angelus, which would be your Hail Mary, essentially. Were you always a follower of history?
Big time, yeah, pretty much all the time, yeah. I mean, I did it in school. I did it for a little bit in university before secondary. That I had all the horrible history, or I was collecting the horrible history magazines, if you remember those.
Subsequently, of course, in more recent times, you've got like a little TV kids show, isn't it?
Yeah, anytime I mention them, people always say the TV show, but I was like, I don't see that when I was in my 20s, so I never saw that. The magazines I all had. Before that, there was books.
That's what got you into it. Tell me about the surroundings then in Westmeath. What would have been a go-to place for the young Brinsley McNamara?
Well, let me see here. So Mullingar Town will say that's where I live. That's where I still live. That's where I'm from. So it'd be all the hinterlands around there. I mean, I can remember a particular day in 2003 when my granddad brought us on kind of like an original Weird Westmeath tour. He showed us to Hill and EIRE. It's a hill. Now, Westmeath is actually, generally speaking, a really, really flat place. Some people call it the flattest county in Ireland because the highest hill in County Westmeath, Mulligameen, is the shortest of the highest hills in each county. So a lot of here is flat. But the Hill of EIRE, not very high, but because Westmeath's so not hilly, you've actually got a pretty good view when you're up there. But anyways, on top of the Hill of EIRE, there's a St. Patrick's chair. Not the only St. Patrick's chair in Ireland. There's so many St. Patrick's chairs or St. Patrick's seats or St. Patrick's thrones. It's like a couple of stones in the shape of a seat, and the legend goes that St. Patrick sat there one time to rest himself on his way to Ishnock, the hill of Ishnock in Westmeath, and ever since then it's a cure for a backache. I remember being shown that a long time ago. I think the most iconic weird thing in Westmeath is just outside Mullingar Town. It's pretty close. It's just called the Beehive. It's a mausoleum in the shape of a beehive. When I say that, when the first time somebody told me it's a mausoleum in the shape of a beehive, I just thought it was like the size of a headstone. No, it's huge. It's like the size of a small room.
Wow.
It's the final resting place of three people. There's three people interred in it. A father and son, Robert Cook, the father, Adolphus Cook, the son, and then the third person is a woman who was not Adolphus Cook's mother. It was like a nurse or something she was. Who raised him mostly. Anyways, here's what happened. There were rich landowners out there at the time. And Adolphus Cook, the son, was under the impression, he was a pretty eccentric guy. He was under the impression that when his father Robert died, Robert would be reincarnated as a bee. So he had his mausoleum built in the shape of a beehive. Adolphus Cook was building a mausoleum for himself when he died, but it was going to be, there was a lot of different stories behind it. But either way, it never got finished. So when he died, they just put him in with the father as well. It's still there. It really is a marvel. And yeah, that's one of the weird things outside Westmeath. That's kind of like, that's the very first weird Westmeath post fair to that one. So that's like kind of the origin of it in a way.
Wow. To be or not to be, huh? And tell me as well, would there be old kind of graveyards and what have you out there?
Full of them, absolutely full of them. The Beehive Mausoleum is in an old graveyard. It's kind of, you have to go through some farmland to get to it in fairness now, but I'm pretty sure you have access to that graveyard, a very old one. You've got some more, let me think, got some really good old graveyards. In Ballymore, County Westmeath, you've got a very old abandoned church, roof gone off kind of thing, not in use whatsoever anymore, trees growing inside of it. And you've got a very old graveyard surrounding it. There was actually, a few years ago in 2021, I think, there was a stone in the shape of a head found, like a person's head found around there. I'm not sure if they ever figured out what it was for. I think they just thought it was part of an older church or something like that. I haven't been able to find that recently, but that was out in Ballymore, County Westmeath. Other old graveyards. Oh, there's one cool one in Castletown, Gagan, County Westmeath. A very small village now. There's a graveyard with some very old medieval ruins inside of it, actually. But one of the most interesting parts of this graveyard is that it was so overgrown. It's in the middle of the town, it's right in the main street. But it was so overgrown for so long. And when a historic graveyard is overgrown like that, you're not really allowed to, remove the weeds and remove the vines off because it can damage graves and it can damage structures more so. So what they did was they put a load of goats in there, and the goats just live there years now. And what the goats do is they eat the weeds, they eat the vines, they eat things growing on the graves and on the structures. but they don't damage the structure, or at least a goat's not liable if it gets damaged because it's a goat, it's livestock. So even if you go there to this day, there's still goats living on this graveyard.
Okay. Actually, Clonmacnoise, is that knocking around your neck of the woods as well, is it?
That's in County Offaly, but it is pretty close to Westmeath. It's very close to Westmeath, actually. It's on the River Shannon coming down from Athlone, but that is in County Offaly. I will not attempt to steal that from Offaly. But that's an interesting place, too. I was there just really recently. Clonmacnoise, for anyone who doesn't know, is probably one of the most famous early medieval monasteries in Ireland. I think that's safe to say. It's a ruin right now. It's on the banks of the River Shannon, would have been very significant at its time. There's an interpretive centre at it now, very well known for its high crosses, gigantic high crosses. The reason I was there was because one of the ruined church buildings has an archway in it. And my mum told me this story from years ago that the crevices that are built into the archway, like the channel, seemingly if one person stands on one side of the arch and the other person on the other side, maybe like a metre or a metre and a half away from each other, and if one person whispers into the channel and the other person on the other side puts their ear into the channel, the whisper will travel along the channel and you'll be able to hear somebody from farther away. I went and tried this out, and I'm pretty sure it does work. It's a real phenomenon, and that's not the only place it happens. It's called Sound Waves something. I can't remember the name, but St. Paul's Cathedral in London has it. Somewhere else does it too, and there's an area of the New York Metro, I think, that does it too, where sound can travel unusually long because of the architecture.
Yeah. So it's like a portal in real time.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A sound portal. One story, totally unverified as far as I'm aware, is that priests would listen to confession at this doorway, but they would specifically listen to it for lepers because they couldn't be right next to a leper without risking getting the infection. So instead they would do it this way so that they get a small distance from each other. I don't know if that's verified at all, but it's a very fun story. And it's one story I have heard about the Whispering Archway in Clonmacnoise.
When it comes to strange things, is there anything really strange that jumps out of your place names that are strange, whatever?
Let me think. Surprisingly enough, this just comes to mind. I mean, just because you mentioned place names, nobody's asked me that question so much. There's a town in Limerick just called Hospital.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I've heard of
Limerick.
It.
Yeah. Limerick, is it? Huh?
I'm going to hospital. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, you're going to hospital.
Nothing. I'm just going to hospital. Sorry.
And I don't think there's a hospital in the hospital either. No, I don't think so.
Well, it could have been a hospitable or a hospital order of the Knights, perhaps, you see.
Hospital orders are brought up when I look at it. I've not been there yet. I've not made a video there yet. But you're reminding me that's something somebody said to me a little bit ago. The place I often say for me is like the strangest place, or just kind of uncanny, is Knock, County Mayo, where the apparition of Mary appeared in the 19th century, late 19th century. I mean, even outside of the apparition, which you could call odd or not odd, but to me, that's not really the kind of strange thing about the place. I mean, apparitions happen, but Knock was, when it happened, a small village, and it is still a small village. Yet it's a small village that has a 5,000 capacity cathedral in it that's empty a lot of the time. It has in total like 4 churches in it. It has water taps of holy water, presumably infinite. I don't know how you bless that much of it in one go. It has, I haven't seen a nun in Ireland in literally decades until I was in Knock just this summer gone. There was nobody else there, but there was nuns there. There was a brother there as well. There was a monk there in their garbs. You go to the shops there and you can buy all the kind of kitsch Catholic paraphernalia that you can only really get in places like Knock. So it's got this really cool but like weird, uncanny energy to it. At least that's what I think about.
Oh, absolutely. And Brinsley, you're missing a trick. It has its own airport.
Oh yeah, it has its own airport. Yeah, I do. Yeah. For sure. That's something I gotta go to Knock Airport and actually make a video about that. In all honesty, you're right. I always forget that bit. It has its own airport. Technically, I think it's called Ireland West Airport, and it's meant to like.
It's a decent sized one. Well, you see, wasn't there a bishop or something behind that? He pushed it at the time.
There is. I nearly had his name in my head there. Monsignor. I nearly had his name there. He actually he used to organise dances up around that part of Mayo. Because that was kind of a thing back in that era. There was dance halls, and a lot of time churches would, priests would kind of organise and monitor them as they're going on.
Oh, and when you say monitor, in other words, when the slow set came up, they had to keep a respectable distance between men and women. The priest would interfere, which is subsequent events have proved to probably be a bit hypocritical, but we won't go there. But yeah. So
somebody told me pretty recently, actually, that came. The reason that was because that came into law in the 1920s or 30s in Ireland, that it had to be done through the church. It was a podcast I recorded with somebody who was a Shannos dancer a few weeks ago, and I've not listened back to it since, so I don't remember exactly what she said, but I need to look at that. But anyways, this guy, the Monsignor that spearheaded the Knock Airport, used to...
it wasn't Horan, was it?
Horan, Monsignor Horan?
Yeah, was that who it was? I wonder.
I think that was his name, Monsignor Horan. Yeah.
And it was by sheer force of, like Hitlerian will that he made that. He made it happen,
there is one famous story at a dance hall there that, the whole thing when somebody comes into a game of poker, somebody comes into a dance hall and they've got, you look down and instead of feet, they've got hooves.
That's an old one.
There's a very genuine episode relating to that in that part of Mayo where a dancing was organised and that happened. I remember looking into that for a good while. So I don't know, that's another odd thing attached to some of the stuff he's done.
Well, one thing I've discovered in Scary Era is pretty much every county in Ireland has a story about hooves on visitors arriving in the middle of the night. You can go from the Hellfire Club to Loftus Hall to various parts of Ireland, and you'll pick up that story. By the way, something you said there, did you say Shannos dancer?
Yeah.
Well, now, Shannos, that's the Gaelic for old ways, right? So... And I would associate that normally with storytelling, the Shanachie and that kind of thing. But you're saying a Shannos dancer might sound a bit of a pedestrian question, but what's a Shannos dancer?
Believe me, I did ask her that because I'm no dancer myself, and she did have an answer. I've not. It's been a few weeks, and I've not gone back to listen to it yet because I haven't edited it yet, so I can't remember what she said exactly. But it's as far as I can remember and tell, it's a less structured version of a vernacular Irish style dancing, and it'll be very different depending on whether you learned it off somebody in County Clare or somebody in County Donegal. It'll have very different moves and styles to it, but I think it's less structured than traditional Irish step dancing. It looks very different to traditional Irish step dancing, and it wouldn't be as structured with signature moves in it. I think that's kind of what I remember it being close as, to be honest.
Yeah. Ireland, well, I think it is. It might be a 5 on your scale, but it can be pretty bizarre, at times. I once heard of a dance called a Crumlin Shuffle, which I would not go into details here because this podcast would not be on the air if I did. So we leave that cryptical thing hanging in the air. Actually, Strange, is there a Castle Strange? Somebody said that to me recently.
There is. It's in Roscommon. Yeah, the Castle Strange. Yeah.
Right.
It's next to the River Suck. Now the castle itself, I don't know that much about, but there's a Castle Strange stone, which is on the land of Castle Strange. I presume, I'm going to guess Castle Strange Castle is a ruin now, or it's been renovated out, somebody lives in. But the Castle Strange stone, I made a video there. That's why I know about it. It's what they call a Latene stone. It's got the Latene style on it. And
French.
It actually is Iron Age stone that has these markings in it, but I'm not really sure what it is. There's, of the Latene stones in Ireland, there's only like 4 of them. One's in Roscommon, Castle Strange stone. One's in Cavan. I think it's in the Cavan County Museum in Ballyjanestuff. And the other ones, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, there is a Castle Strange and a Castle Strange stone.
Strange.
Yeah, I believe the family name was Lestrange. Did you ever hear of somebody with Lestrange?
I did. I knew of a fire chief in Ireland called Lestrange. Probably Lestrange. And I can still see it because it's dating from my business career many, many moons ago. And he was based out in this huge old place. I think it had been an old orphanage or something up around, Raheny type direction. Anyway, so I'm going off on one of my tangents and I don't mean to kick myself back into kilter really quickly. You're saying, speaking of strange and French sounding names, etc., the language of Ireland, the actual, the verbosity, there are strange dialects and stuff in Ireland. Are there any languages besides Gaelic?
I actually want to do a video series on the languages of Ireland. There's English, the most spoken one. Then we've Irish with the Munster, Ulster and Connacht dialects. Then we have Ulster Scots, which I wish I knew more about. I actually live in Scotland where they do speak Scots in some parts as well. I wish I knew more about it. I'd like to go into it. I don't know if you're getting at Yola by any chance, the language that was spoken in South East County Wexford from the 12th and 19th centuries.
Wow.
I don't know if you heard about that one, have you?
Was it a kind of an anglicised Englishy thing, no?
It was Old English. It was basically Old English.
Oh, it was Old English, right? Okay.
It was Old English that came over in the Norman invasion of the 1169.
Okay.
That people had settled there at the time. But it became a language isolate because apparently from the rest of Ireland, South East County Wexford was kind of hard to get to for up until the 19th century. So it meant without outside contact, it just became a language isolate. There's even records of English speakers, either people from England or English speakers in Ireland in the 16th century, travelling down to southeast Wexford. And even they report that the people down there talk as if it's times of Chaucer. They talk like 200 years ago. That's extinct now. It went extinct in the 19th century. And I'm trying to remember some of the words from it. There's no full dictionary of Yola, and some very small aspect of the language is maintained in how people talk down there. But there is some sources on it that we can see how they talk. One is like they put a different stress onto parts of the word. Somebody say was robber. They wouldn't call them robber, they'd be robart or something that. They put the stress on the second syllable instead of the first syllable of words like that. There's quite a few people tried to pull apart how the language works, but there's no authentic audio recordings of someone speaking it. Weirdly enough, Fingal in County Dublin used to have the same thing, Fingalian, which was the same thing as Yola. It was an Old English language isolate, but it died out before Yola, and we know we've way fewer sources on that. So Yola, Fingalian, probably a few. Weirdly enough, back in the Middle Ages, when after the Normans came, so they brought over some of the Old English with them. But the majority language spoken by any of the lords was French. So there was a time in the Middle Ages where English and French and Irish would have been all, kind of competing to be the main language in the country. And at least one of the leftover phrases we have from it is, did anyone ever call you a gossin by any chance, Mark?
I refuse to be intimidated, but can you repeat that? A what?
A gossin.
A gossin. Well, is it not? Is that not like a garçon? No, a young fella. A young fella.
French, comes from French. Yeah.
Is that it?
I mean, my dad has called me that all my life, but apparently that's where it comes from the French in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, but it's like when you click your fingers in a restaurant, you're being really ignorant, but you think you're being really cool, and you go, garçon. I think it's a variation of that.
Maybe so. One of the reasons people think it maintained is because, like a Norman lord, French-speaking would say it to a local retainer. And the local retainer would just hear themselves being called boy over and over again, just being called garçon over and over again. So it kind of became a word that they would say to each other to kind of make fun of it. It's still stuck.
Yeah, but it's like when there's a fight breaking out or something and someone goes, listen, boy. You always kind of stop and you always like stop in your tracks, Boy, garçon. I have a theory. Was it Yola was the language, was it?
Yeah, Yola.
I feel it just moved northwards to kind of Dalkey area and kind of became West Brit.
Really?
Because you got that West Brit thing going on, don't you?
Maybe. I don't. It's Dalkey in Dublin.
Yeah, well, the whole, Dort language as it's known to Dart.
Oh, right. Yeah. There is the D. Is that D4 accent?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's how. What's that? Is that Irish people trying to be English or trying to up their class or something? Is it or?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised.
Is it insecurity?
I have heard before the explanation of the D4 accent, but I'm not the most familiar with it, to be honest.
Yeah.
From butter instead of butter or something like that. Or I don't know.
Listen, you've hit on something here. Okay, so I'm narrator for, I'm not going to get into stats, but it's quite popular. Every week on Sunday, there's a publication on a YouTube channel called Fact Feast. Okay? Fact Feast. And yours truly is the narrator for it. And it's very, very, very popular. Well, within the first hour, you'll usually see 3,000 hits, Oh,
we're all brilliant.
Yeah, and there are instances there where we've over 1 million hits. Now, I started out with that guy. We've never met. It's all electronic. He sends the scripts. I do the narration. And I remember initially thinking, he's wasting his money here, but hey, business is business, And we tried all kinds of things, Roman, Britain, this, that, and the other, and I'd be giving it all that for the, the microphone. But he hit on Victorian England, and that was a bit like your Weird Ireland, light the touch paper and stand back. It just blew up. So anyway, why am I going there? Not to publicise Fact Feast, but he regularly pulls me up on things like pronunciations of, I'd say ladder. He says, he sends in his corrections. It's ladder. Same with butter. I would say butter or in Ireland butter. right? He'd say butter. And make sure you do it. Oh God, I get pulled up on it all the time. Anyway, listen, we're going all linguistic here, and we don't mean to be. So when Brinsley McNamara decides to research something, what's the process for that?
Let me see here. I mean, for example, in 2 days' time, I'm going to County Tyrone and County Monaghan on the way. Mm-hmm. And the 2 videos I already have in mind there, but looking at the route going to be going, I'm going to see what stuff's on the way. Let's say we pick something that looks of interest. Honestly, I'm going to trace the route on Google Maps, because the amount of stuff you see in Google Maps you won't believe. And then the 2 other most valuable resources, number one really is archaeology.ie. A lot of GIS that happens.
Tell me about archaeology. Quick story about archaeology.ie, okay? Is this the one with all the red dots on it and stuff?
Yeah, red dots and blue dots.
Okay, somebody gave me a metal detector, right, as a Christmas present about 5 or 6 years ago. For about 3 or 4 years, it sat in its box, all right? And one day I decided, you know what, sure, I might do a bit of beach combing or something. But I was very aware that the laws here are draconian when it comes to metal detecting. And I went on something, it might have been archaeology.ie, but it sticks in my mind, the red dots. And it was like, she might as well just throw the thing away. I can't use it. Because everywhere is everywhere. They are. In England, it's completely different.
You can't do it near an antiquity, is that it?
That's it. And it's treasure trove, no matter what it is. So and they put a total downer on me. But anyway, you're there. You research archaeology.ie. Any other sources you use?
That's the most valuable one, because that's compiled by professional archaeologists in each part of the country. So let's say you find a holy well, not impossible. Let's say you find on Google Maps. Happens pretty often, to be honest. You'll go to the archaeology maps, you click on the dot for it. They absolutely will have an entry on it. There probably isn't that much information on it. A lot of the archaeology.ie information is just stuff that archaeologists write down a lot, like the dimensions of something. They sometimes have extra information, and following that, honestly, Google search, there's actually quite a lot of websites in Ireland that document these things, going back sometimes to the 1990s. Some really archaic looking websites, but some really good resources that you try to pull together as much space you can. Then there's the Dukas collection, the Dukas collection, Dukas.ie. That's the collection of the Irish folklore collection.
How's that spelt?
Duchas.
Right. Well, Tógailge a gum, so I think that's heritage.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, I think that means heritage, something like that. Yeah. Okay. So Dukas.
Dukas. Yeah. So let's say you find a St. John's Holy Well, let's say you find that, and let's say you're in County Monaghan, let's say you're near Scott's House. Okay. You can go into the Duke's collection, you can search St. John's Well as a keyword. You can even search by county, let's say you put in County Monaghan, and you will get up all of accounts, all that written in the 1930s, of folklore relating to this, something with the key name St. John's Well in County Monaghan. And you might find some very, very good information there, to be honest, very detailed information there. A lot of people use that one as a research source. So the Dukas collection and archaeology.ie maps, those two together are the most useful ones, And then, I don't know, if I can think of any other jokes on the day, I'll just throw those in as well.
And I'd say a source as well is, some of these 300,000 followers, 75,000 followers, TikTok, 300,000 on Insta. We're talking to Brinsley McNamara here. He's the man behind Weird Ireland. So I suppose you have a rich source of people saying, have you checked this out? Have you checked that out? And
I do have a spreadsheet, in fact, yeah. And I really, really badly need to update the spreadsheet of all the recommendations I've gotten. Yeah, I know I've got a huge amount of stuff coming in. And I have, by all means, used their recommendations, stuff I've never heard of before. So, I mean, I'm light in some part of the country compared to others. Don't know. I've got plenty of sources coming in all the time. Yeah, 100%.
There are gems to be found because, when you're hit with a plethora of good intentioned advice like that, the temptation, because there's so much of it, is to discard some of it. But you will find gems in there as well. Here's one for you, by the way. Right, just shows you.
Yeah.
Recently I tried DeepSeek. The AI.
Oh, the Chinese one.
It's like a GPT-4 or whatever, but the Chinese version of it. I was always fascinated by this old military barracks I grew up in, and there was a murder there. There was a poisoning, and there was some information online. But funny enough, DeepSeek found a few more murders I wasn't reckoning on. Of course, there's the infamous 1916 where there was guys taken off the street and just including a well-known pacifist, and just shot out of hand by this loony officer called Colthurst at the time. So anyway, I tried Deep Seek, and I found, I was beginning to believe all things Deep Seek, right? Which is a bad mistake, because I'd say AI is a useful tool, but it is not trustworthy. Let me give you an example.
No, it'll make up stuff.
Absolutely. And I really don't mean to lower the tone, but I will, me being me. So I was really getting carried away with it. And I looked at my cat one day and I decided to say, Deep Seek, I said, tell me the story of Marvin's Hole, right? The holy rock of Marvin's Hole, right? In other words, my cat's ass, right?
Yeah.
And I put it in expecting nothing. Well, I got chapter and verse and trope of the holy rock of Marvin's Hole, which was all news to me and news to Marvin as well. But we'll move on swiftly. I was nearly going to say Rent Boys, even going further lower than that. But Wren Boys, traditions, etc. What have we got? Any folk traditions you can think of?
Well, Wren Boys, because you mentioned there, for anyone that doesn't know, Wren Boys are a tradition in Ireland, in quite a few different parts of Ireland. It's relatively well spread, but has gone through peaks and troughs of popularity. It is a tradition specifically on St. Stephen's Day in Ireland. Some people call it Boxing Day. It's the 26th of December, the day after Christmas Day, where people will dress up in costumes, and they'll go traditionally they would go door to door in the community. They would play music to the people inside, and they would receive a donation of money. Traditionally, that donation would go to either buying drink on the night, or it would go to organising a party sometime in the future. Sometimes for New Year's, and sometimes for maybe in February or later on. And these days, that tradition is still going. In some places, it never left, and in some places, it left and then came back. Dublin, interestingly, actually, some parts of Dublin has quite a bit of it, whereas in Mullingar, where I live, it's not really a thing. But these days, they might perform, instead of going door to door, they might perform in a town square, or they might go to different bars in the towns and perform. Also, the costumes will vary a lot, depending on where in the country you are and what time this is happening at, like what era this is happening at. They can look like just random Halloween costumes.
Yes.
They can look like straw boys with the straw masks.
Yes.
Also, what kind of people do it? In some places in Roscommon, I know children do it. They don't wear any particular type of costume. They wear their normal clothes. And then in other parts, only adults do it. And what types of songs they sing will vary. Sometimes there should be a big focus traditionally put on the wren, how the wren is the king of the birds, and supposedly gave up St. Stephen's location, and he was executed because of it, and that's why they kind of punished the wren on the day. But some places forget to do that, some places still do that. It's a very varied and long tradition in Ireland, and in other parts too. But there's other traditions like that one, where people dress up and play music. On the 1st of February, St. Bridget's Day, you have Biddy Boys, or Biddies, Biddies is what people say now. That's a really similar thing to Wren Boys, but on St. Bridget's Day instead. And the biggest place I'm aware of for that is Florida and County Kerry, where they still have a very organised Biddy celebration. They dress up, those guys, they dress up in all white kind of uniform, and they wear a kind of straw woven hat, and they play music. And these days they have a parade of biddies down the middle of Clortland town. But I was actually there this year, and this year gone, it was too rainy, so to play inside the bars instead, which was still good and all, but didn't have quite the spectacle of being outside. And some of them do go to people's houses playing music. There's more than that. You've got straw boys, you've got mummers. I think mummers play it on the 12 days of Christmas, on the 12 days of Christmas in general. And some of them show up at weddings. It's a very, really varied tradition, this whole dressing up and going to people's. It's like Halloween in a way, dressing up and playing music and going to people's houses. It's a really kind of embedded tradition in Ireland, and probably more widely across Europe in general. But we do have quite a bit of it here, and it's getting maybe a bit of a comeback. I mean, Wren Boys are coming back in part, and Biddies are definitely getting more popular. There's just such a spectacle behind it, you know.
Did you say mummers?
Mummers, yeah, mummers.
Wow. And they're singers, yeah?
Are they singers? I need to remember because there's so many of them. Some of them don't sing. Some of them perform a play.
All right.
Some of them perform a play. I did look at this before. I've not seen any mummers before, but some of them I think is rather than playing music and singing, they perform a kind of an open pantomime, and they do it around Christmas time. It was honestly kind of like the original Christmas pantomime you get in the theatre these days, but it would be people performing outside and wearing strange costumes. And characters like Finn McCool would be a character in it, and like St. Patrick would be a character in it, and like St. George would be a character, would be a bad guy, that kind of thing.
Did you hear about this thing, kind of turn of the year in, is it Kerry, where someone gets shot?
Oh, Port
What? Yeah, what is it?
Portmagee, County Kerry, kind of down the road from Castlevine.
What's that about?
I was there this year. I was there this New Year's for that. Ireland's not especially well known for New Year's Eve traditions, not like some parts of the world. Like I used to live in Edinburgh for a bunch of years, and their New Year's Hogmanay, they take it very seriously.
But Aulriki, Aulriki, yeah.
But here in Ireland, it's not as big a thing. Like, it's funny because St. Stephen's Day is the biggest night of the year, and then 4 days later it's New Year's. So, and you just kind of do the same thing you did again. So I was determined to do something different this year, and I was like, there has to be some tradition related to New Year's Eve in Ireland. And just on Reddit, I found somebody talking about the Portmagee New Year's Eve celebration. So Portmagee, County Kerry, not a big place. 2 pubs, from what I can remember. And yeah, there's 2 pubs in it. And so what happens is, if you're in Portmagee on New Year's Eve, leading up to midnight on, let's say, 2024, turning 2025, like this year gone, about 10 minutes beforehand, somebody dressed up like an old man wearing like a big fake beard and with 2 fake like walking sticks will start walking up and down the town, and they'll have 2024 written on them.
Right.
They're the year leaving that's now old, and they'll be kind of just walking up and down the town like that. And then at the moment it turns the 10-second countdown to New Year's, you'll hear a loud bang. I actually don't know where the bang comes from. I presume it's a bang. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know who does it. You don't see it. The old year will fall over, presumably dead.
Yeah, take that for your walking stick. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of guys pick them up and kind of drag them off, and everyone counts down to New Year's. And then just, seconds, a minute after it turns 2025, a young person will come out of one of the doors, one of the buildings of Portmagee, dressed in all white with a bowler hat and a walking stick with 2025 and a sash across them. And they'll parade up and down the town, and they're the New Year, and the tradition is to go around and hug people that want to be, welcome to the New Year. They'll make a speech. It's always a young person from the community, but they don't know who it's going to be until they walk out the door. And there's a lot of guessing and like wondering who it's going to be. The old year, I'm pretty sure it's the same person for loads of years in a row. But no, that's the Portmagee one. And one person asked me, does that come from like an old pagan tradition? It's not that old. It's actually from the 18th century.
Right.
And seemingly it comes from a French ship that got stuck around Portmagee one New Year's or something like that. So it's not that old, but it's very, very continuous. It's going continuously for a very, very long time. They actually said it while I was there, and I can't remember how long. Pretty much since then, I think over 300 years it's going continuously, with only very, very few gaps in years, if any at all even.
Wow. And sticking in that neck of the woods, the Puck Fair, is that still a thing?
Oh, that's still going. Yep, that's up in Kilortland. That's where Biddies Day happened this year, and then they have that celebration there. There's quite a few celebrations in Kilortland actually. That's Ireland's oldest festival. Yeah, they mark it as, I believe it is. I actually was there last year, but I was only there for a little bit. It's and I couldn't really gather exactly what it's about. But one of the biggest spectacles of the Puck Fair is that they traditionally they'd bring in like a goat, and the goat would be made like king of the fair, king of the puck, and the goat would be put on top of a pedestal over the town for the duration, like the 3 days or 2 days of the festival, and the goat would be just up there the whole time. But as of I think 2022, that's no longer the case, because I think they were anticipating a very, very hot summer, and it wouldn't have been fair to have the goat up there for so long. So the goat's only up there periodically now. Yeah. But there's music playing. It used to be very well known for livestock running around the place. Yeah, plenty of drinking and all that kind of thing down at it. But fair, I guess, is still going. But I must go another time, to be honest. But I just didn't have enough time when I was there last.
Yeah, you were very genteel when you said like a pedestal, because if my recollection is right, the thing used to be put up on a raised stand of about 20 or 30 foot high, and with very little moving about space. Now, this was way back in the day, and I think, I have a vague recollection of animal cruelty stepping in at one point and making it...
Really?
Yeah. Now, that could be just in the dark recesses of my mind. I just had a feeling it wasn't politically correct anymore. Very quickly then, because I'm taking far too much of your time.
Don't worry about it.
Well, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it, Brinsley. I'm enjoying it. Ring forts. Any views on ring forts?
Ring forts, views on them. I was about to mention, you know when you said the red dots on the archaeology.ie map?
Yes.
Honestly, without embellishment, about 90% of those are ring forts, and 90% of the red dots are ring forts. That's how common ring. Only about, maybe 20% of those red dots are not ring forts. There's that many ring forts. Opinions on them? I don't know. I've never done a video on them. They're cool, For the most part, they just look like some trees in a very small raised hill, like in a field. I actually read a book, just like a kind of a leaflet, like last year, called "The Men Who Eat Ring Forts" or something like that, which I thought was a great, absolutely terrific title. And it had to do with how they're not all completely adequately documented in the country yet, but there's, I think, tens of thousands of them, certainly in thousands, and how a lot of them can end up being demolished for different, agricultural stuff going on, or like building development, especially road development going on. But opinions on them, not really so much. Most of them just like a little bit of a hill with some trees on them.
Yeah, it was imbued into me that you didn't interfere with them, or else you would pay.
Kind of
Yeah, fairy forts.
Yeah, fairy forts. Yeah, so ring fort is very much scientific word for it. Well, just a word for it, I guess. A ring fort is in it had been a medieval dwelling. Some of them are older than medieval. There's kind of an idea that they're Iron Age, they're Celtic made, but generally speaking, they're medieval. And there would have been a dwelling. There would have been a dwelling.
Like a Roth or something like that.
Yeah, a rat. Yeah.
A rat.
But since then they started getting the idea of fairy forts attached to them. And I think the reason being that they would have been so common. They still to this day are so common in Ireland. But they would have looked like somewhat man-made structures, because they are, but they have now gotten embedded into the landscape. And I think people, if they didn't fully know what they were, remember what they were, would explain it, the fairy forts. There is a very old fairy lore in Ireland that would kind of be, like nature spirits. Yes. It would be buried from place to place and over time as well. But yeah, that's definitely the most commonly known thing about ring forts, is that growing up, myself included, growing up, you hear them calling fairy forts. Fairies sit there and you ought to avoid it, or at least not break anything while you're there, or desecrate somehow or another. That's definitely got to be the most common Irish fairy lore.
The Gaeltacht areas, we were talking about language earlier.
Yeah.
Any research as regards those little enclaves that are still there?
Well, I was actually down in the Gaeltacht just last summer. I was in the Dingle Gaeltacht. My dad's from Kerry and wanted to go for years to relearn some Irish. I went to Gael school for primary. But he made the stipulation that it had to be a Munster Gaeltacht, which was a pain in the ass, because the courses were there was fewer courses compared to if you go to Donegal, where there was loads of courses. So, yeah, I mean, you got the ones in Connacht, Connemara, and you got the Donegal ones, very expensive. You got the Waterford one, which, my God, I do not know a whole lot about the Waterford.
It is there because now that you mention it, I recall my daughter being down there a few years back.
I got to go there. I don't know much about it, to be honest. I really don't. And the most kind of mysterious ones is the Meath Gaeltacht, which, to be honest, are actually not that far from where I am in Mullingar. People sometimes refer to it as the Meath Gaeltacht as if it's one, and technically it is one area. It's one overall Gaeltacht in County Meath. However, it's two areas. It's two areas that are not connected to each other. Gibbstown is one of them. And the other one, I can't remember the name of it. Now, these are really small. They're, and they're very, very rural. One of them's outside Trimtown and one of them's outside Navantown. And I'm not even sure if there's a shop in these. But they come from, all the other Gaeltachts in Ireland come from where there had been a continued and unbroken tradition of speaking Irish. And in the 1930s, to preserve that tradition, they gave special designation to the areas in the west. However, in Leinster, there wasn't any Gaeltacht because there had been Irish-speaking, native Irish-speaking had been kind of died out in Leinster by the 19th century. So for a bunch of different interesting reasons, they tried the experiment of establishing one in Leinster, in County Meath. So they moved over, the government moved over a bunch of people from primarily Connemara Gaeltacht into County Meath, and to see if they could, foster the language there. It didn't fully work out. In the end, the Meath people, the people from Connemara, a lot of them just couldn't speak English at all. They had to learn English just to be able to talk everyone else around it. There was actually a lot of prejudice against them by the people of the locals of County Meath, who back in the 1930s in parts of the Midlands, like that, Irish speaking would have been really gone out of practice. And in some parts of the Midlands, actually would have been very unpopular. So they would have, jeered the Irish speakers coming in, stop speaking that gibberish. And,
Yeah. Because they were so much more sophisticated, you see. They weren't trendy.
Conspiracy theory at the time, which was genuinely, people said it at the time, was the reason that the Fianna Fáil government at the time under Eamon de Valera moved a bunch of people from Connemara to this part of County Meath, was that what he was really trying to do was he was trying to change the voting demographic of the area to favour Fianna Fáil in another election. And that's not a conspiracy theory that people came up with since. That's a conspiracy theory that people were saying back in the 1930s.
Surely not, Brinsley. Surely not.
I haven't. That's just what people said in the newspaper. Some people in the newspaper said back then. But it's ongoing till now. There's actually
Allegedly.
a very big deal in the volume in one.
For those listening outside the country, Gaeltachts are areas of Ireland that still speak the original tongue, which was the Gaelic tongue. Brinsley, just some kind of paranormal things. I saw you once, and was it a hill that goes a funny way, or a road or something, a magic hill or something? Is that something?
Uh-huh.
What's that about?
Magic hills, some people call them gravity hills.
All right.
You'll find them all over the world. But in Ireland, the whole idea with a magic hill or a gravity hill is it's a hill where when your car is on the slope, is on the decline or incline or whatever way, so that when you take your handbrake off, you park and take your handbrake off, put it out of gear, intuitively the car should start going downhill as gravity would normally have it, but instead it starts rolling uphill. That's always how Magic Hill works. I made a video of one in Jenkinstown, County Louth. It's a pretty well-known one, but there's two very well-known ones in County Sligo. There's a very well-known one in County Waterford. There's a well-known one outside Ballymatten called Longford, called the Devil's Pull. They're all over the place, basically. So this one in Jenkinstown, it's kind of hard to find because it's not like a distinct spot. You're just on a country road, and sometimes it's really hard to do because you're on a road, sometimes a busy one, sometimes there are cars coming up behind you. You can't be just stopping your car and trying to let it roll backwards or uphill or whatever. But we did find it. We found it in Jenkinstown. And it works. It actually does work. It does go uphill, or at least looks like it. But the idea behind the Magic Hill, it's a really compelling looking thing when you see it. But seemingly, it's always actually going downhill. It's just a very slight decline. However, the landscape surrounding it will make it sort of look like it's going uphill. Or berries, could be berries and magic. That's what other people say. Yeah, I mean, it is going downhill. It is going downhill. It just looks like it's going uphill. That's what they say about it.
Oh.
Maybe there's other explanations in other places, but that's the general one I hear.
Okay. Finally, I don't normally mention monsters on Scary Era. We get lots of apparitions and people with no legs walking along and heads under the arms and EVPs and what have you. Any monsters? We've had one monster story so far, like a fellow author like yourself, Kieran Fanning, I think his name is. He's a lovely guy. He's Haunted Ireland, I think, is his book, and your book is Weird Ireland. And he mentioned a monster of a lake or something. Have you anything similar?
I have tons of lake monsters. Just nearby in Westmeath, there's a Loch Ree, very, very big lake, split between counties, Westmeath, Longford, Roscommon. There was a reported Loch Ree monster there sighting in 1960. It was never found after, but it kind of leads into this really big tradition in Ireland called, have you ever heard the term a horse eel or a horse fish or a horndeal? Have you heard these terms before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's basically the overall idea of normally lake monster, sometimes sea monster. Normally it's inland lakes though, of people sighting a very big, up to 13 feet long, 8 to 13 feet long is normally the account you hear, of an eel-shaped creature going through the water. Its head is sometimes reported different ways. Sometimes its head has no eyes and it has a big round mouth of sharp teeth. Sometimes its head is the shape of a horse's head. And some people call them horsefish, horse eels, horned eels, all these names come up. The funny thing is, if you go into Google right now and Google search any of these terms, you are not going to find a Wikipedia article that says horsefish or horse eels and explain what I'm talking about. But when I looked into that first, it made me think, okay, they're not, it's not really that big a tradition. But if you go beyond that, if you can go to the RTE archives that are available online, or other, actually that's a pretty good resource, that one, you will find so many, in particular in the 1950s and 1960s, accounts of people reporting seeing creatures like the ones I described. And sometimes you'll even get video interviews with the people that report seeing these, and it's just so odd when you see someone like, you're not just reading it, you're just seeing the person describing what they saw. You can get a lot, in particular in Connemara, in particular in the lakes in Connemara and County Galway, you get a huge amount of these accounts. The Loch Ree Monster one was about the same time, I guess, and it was in 1960. It has to do with no word of a lie, 3 priests that were fishing off a boat in Loch Ree in the 18th of May that year. And it was about 9:30 at night, so relatively bright out still.
Yeah.
And they saw, they reported seeing for a minute on the far side of the shore a creature like that. They reported to the land, to the Inland Fisheries Board. Next thing, loads of fishermen show up trying to find this monster. A local pub puts up £100 reward to find it. Some people are talking about using dynamite to, smoke it out or electrify the lake. It's a bit of a sensation at the time. It actually got well reported in the newspapers at the time. So the Loch Ree Monster was a very well reported thing. Never found, but there is so many theories as to what it could be or what the water phenomenon could be. So no doubt there's a lot of lake monsters in Ireland. Some people say they're lampreys. You know what a lamprey is?
No.
A lamprey is a vampire fish. They're a real thing.
Wow.
They look like a leech, but they're very long. Actually, no, they don't look like a leech. A leech looks like a slug. They look like an eel. They look like an eel. They have no eyes. They've got a round mouth, and they've kind of got these sucker-looking mouths, and they drain blood. They're not that big, but what some people reckon was that the Loch Ree Monster could have been an abnormally large version of these. Some people reckon that it could be a type of prehistoric fish that's not been commonly reported to be discovered yet, which does happen on occasion, that people assume from fossils that a type of fish is extinct only to find it actually does live somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
That has happened in the past. Specifically the Loch Ree Monster, members of the Inland Fisheries Board, when they were asked, what did you think it was? One guy said, I'd say it was a pike that was stuck in a pipeline, because a pike, they're absolutely huge fish.
Yes.
In Ireland, if it gets stuck in a pipeline, it'll start flopping around the water trying to get out of it, and it'll look like that. Some people said it was probably just driftwood in the lake. One guy, a really interesting explanation on the Inland Fisheries Board in Westmeath, said it was probably a family of otters swimming through the lake, because apparently, I didn't know this, when otters swim, they swim in a straight line following each other.
Right.
If the water's cresting, it'll look like one thing going through the water, when really it's many things. So there's been a lot of or it could be just a big giant fish, I don't know. But there's been a lot of really good explanations for what these things could be. But the funny thing is, there's been whole books written on lake monsters in Ireland. These are actually one very famous book written by Peter Costello, I think, in the 1970s about lake monsters in Ireland. No, it's an absolutely huge phenomenon that can go way more into. And there's even, let me just get that name, Peter Costello. You ever heard of Bigfoot in Ireland by any chance?
Like a Sasquatch type thing.
Yeah, like a Sasquatch. Yeah, you ever hear of them?
So an Irish Bigfoot, please elaborate.
Yep. Let me just tell you, actually, the book In Search of Lake Monsters by Peter Costello. It's an Irish book from the 1970s, I think, originally about trying to find these lake monsters. There is resources on this. But anyway, Bigfoot in Ireland. There absolutely is an Irish Bigfoot Research Organisation, IBRO, or sometimes RBRG, Irish Bigfoot Research Group. And it's at least 3 guys. And up until 2023, they were still pretty active doing interviews. You can find interviews on a podcast, go and documenting Bigfoot sightings in Ireland and go and looking. And I've been really wanting to ask them more about that and contact them, but I haven't had enough so far. Let's try again. But the Irish Bigfoot is, the Bigfoot phenomenon is normally like a 7-foot tall, like the size of a big person, an 8-person, I guess. The Irish Bigfoot, seemingly sometimes, they call it a gruagach, so like a hairy thing in Irish. And it can be, sometimes it's like a really narrow version that can be mistaken for a mossy tree. And sometimes it's like a Neanderthal type thing. It lives out in the woods, but apparently the noise it makes sounds like a donkey, like the noise a donkey makes. And there's reports, at least I've heard this from the IBRO talking about it, of if you see random wooden structures made of branches out in the woods, that's the type of behaviour of Bigfoot in Ireland. To be honest, I have seen that kind of thing. Presumed it was people that made it, but I have seen those random type structures they're talking about. And there's even, apparently, and this isn't unique to the Irish Bigfoot, apparently around the world there's a belief that Bigfoot isn't just like a wild animal, it's more of a kind of supernatural being, to the extent where if you're using an electronic device like a flashlight or a radio, then a Bigfoot coming towards you, although you can't see it yet. The light will start flickering, the radio will stop working, so there can be kind of electromagnetic currents attached to them. Apparently that can happen. They say with the Irish Bigfoot that can happen, but that's not unique to Irish Bigfoot either. It can happen with any of them. There's a belief of that. So that's something I really, really want to pursue more, is learning more about that. There's actually a very funny YouTube video of a Bigfoot sighting in Blessington from like the earlier days of YouTube, and it's pretty funny video. It's only like 10 seconds long. Bigfoot Blessington.
Well, I'd well believe you, Brinsley, and I would. A couple of things just strike me. When it comes to the whole Connemara region with the lakes there, its proximity is so much to the Atlantic Ocean. Who knows what could have ended up over the soups of time and the seas of time. And as well as that, mentioned Kieran Fanning there, who was a fellow author, and he had told me, I think it was a teenage girl at some point, it was reckoned she was killed by one of these monsters that had come out of a lake. And he said to this day, there's still on her tombstone, there's a little squiggly monster type thing etched into the tombstone. And in more recent times, apparently I think it was a kraken, a mythical squid or octopus, but of gigantic proportions, had been reported for years throughout sea shanties and sailors' tales and what have you. And recently, they've discovered that these things actually exist, that can literally destroy a yacht or a boat. These things are huge, and they do exist out in certain regions. So nothing would surprise me.
That would surprise me the least, to be honest. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Look, I think everybody knows you at this stage, but where can you be found online? Or sell us Weird Ireland. Go on. Yeah,
sure. All the social media channels, Weird Ireland on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. There's an email address on the Instagram. It's put up there, weirdireland.jpeg@gmail.com. Other than that, there's a podcast out right now, Weird Ireland Podcast. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, even on YouTube. On my YouTube channel, it gets uploaded there, wherever you get podcasts. And there's a book out now. The book is out, Weird Ireland, An Unofficial Guide to the Island by Brinsley McNamara. It can be gotten through any reputable bookseller in the UK or Ireland. Although it came out in North America there about 2 weeks ago, so if you go onto Amazon.com, you can even order it through there, or other US booksellers. And it should still be on shelves in Ireland anyways, if you go into a Easton's or that kind of thing. Yeah, it should still be on shelves.
Thanks for your time, Brinsley McNamara. It's been a pleasure to have you on Scary Era.
No worries. Thank you very much, Mark. It's been a pleasure to be on. Thanks for asking me.
Good luck to you now. Take care.
Yeah, a couple of things over the years, but I've learned. Well, I suppose it's not learned. I've just become accustomed to it, and I think it's maybe another sense or something. But often when you go into places, you'll get a feeling for the place, and you'll get a feeling of whether or not it's comfortable. And whatever causes that, who knows what causes that? But we have an intuition, we have an inbuilt intuition. I can't describe what it is or where it comes from or the physics of it or the chemistry of it, but it's there, and anybody will tell you to stick with your intuition. If you think something doesn't feel right, then don't hang around.
Superb advice from regular contributor to Scary Era, David McGlynn, aka The Squire. And don't hang around either. If you've got an Irish paranormal tale to tell, simply email paranormalireland@protonmail.com and it'll be read out for you. Or you get to tell it on air yourself. That's paranormalireland@protonmail.com.
Thank you so much for listening. And thanks as well to everybody at Paranormal UK Radio Network for hosting the show.
Mark Manning.
Take care, 'cause I care.